Hello and welcome. I'm Rawia Alami and this is the Dailies, where we take a look at important news stories, reports, analyses and articles published in newspapers and media outlets across the world. At the United Nations General Assembly, a cascade of events made up international headlines. From the wave of recognitions of Palestinian statehood and the charged reactions it provoked to President Trump's speech that mixed bold statements on Ukraine with his familiar attacks on Europe. Adding to the drama, the day was punctuated by lighter, if awkward moments, a stalled escalator and a malfunctioning teleprompter as Trump made his way to the podium. Together, these episodes turned the UN gathering into a global media spectacle. On those lines, The Telegraph asked today whether President Trump was sabotaged at the UN. The report describes as unusually chaotic day for President Trump at the UN General Assembly, marked by speculation of sabotage. First, an escalator froze beneath him and First Lady Melania, and also leaving them awkwardly stranded before climbing the steps. Later, Trump's teleprompter failed, forcing him to rely on a paper copy. The piece highlights the UN insiders reportedly joked about cutting power to highlight budget shortage, fueling suspicion. It also points out that Trump's aides demanded an investigation, even though Trump's comments that whoever is operating the teleprompter is in big trouble drew some laughter. Despite the mishaps, Trump used his hour-long speech to blast Democrats, promote the U.S. economy, and deliver sharp warnings to Europe about migration, claiming mass arrivals are destroying the continent. Diving further into what President Trump said at the UN address, the New York Times reported on the American president's rebuke of global institutions and his complaint about immigration and environmentalists, warning representatives present that their countries are going to hell. The paper also published an analytical report fact-checking and scrutinizing the president's address, exposing multiple inaccuracies. The piece contends that Trump's boasts of $17 trillion in new U.S. investment are grossly inflated compared with official figures. His assertion that London is moving towards Sharia law is dismissed as baseless, echoing past Islamophobic accusations against Mayor Sadiq Khan. Trump's criticism of China's wind power is also false, according to the analysis, as China leads the world in wind energy capacity. The piece highlights that his claims about falling energy prices are also overstated, with electricity costs rising. Other debunked claims included mass illegal crossings from prisons, inflated overdose deaths, and mischaracterizing Washington, D.C. as America's crime capital. The analysis shows how Trump's rhetoric blends exaggeration with falsehoods, underscoring the need for rigorous fact-checking on the world stage. While covering President Trump's General Assembly address, the Washington Post published an analysis highlighting an overwhelming public skepticism about Donald Trump's push for a Nobel Peace Prize. A new post-Ipsos poll shows that 76% of Americans believe he does not deserve the honor, with just 22% in favor. Also, criticism is fueled by disapproval of Trump's handling of major conflicts, as 60% disapprove of his Ukraine policy and 58% disapprove of his approach to Gaza. Even Republicans are split, while support among independents and Democrats is minimal. The poll also revisits Barack Obama's 2009 award, with 54% now saying he did not deserve it either. Trump, who has openly sought the prize, used his recent UN speech to tout misleading claims about resolving global conflicts, a message the piece concludes is unlikely to sway opinion. Foreign Policy, like many other publications, reported on President Trump's recent statement regarding the war on Ukraine, describing them as a major change in the president's position. The report recounts how, after meeting Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in New York, Trump said Ukraine could win back all of Ukraine in its original form, and even hinted at pushing further into Russian territory. The piece highlights that this marks a sharp departure from his earlier view that Ukraine would have to give up land. Trump also mocked Russia's military but avoided promising direct U.S. action, instead pointing to NATO arms support. Analysts see his remarks as recognition that Russia is struggling, though doubts remain about how far he will go. The piece also underscores that his softer response to Russian drone in Poland shows ongoing caution, even as his ties with Zelensky appear to improve. President Trump's statements were music to Ukrainian ears as all the press in the country reported on this new and changed American position. Kiev Post published a report quoting Ukrainian president, who said in an interview with Fox News that President Donald Trump now understands that Ukraine cannot trade away territory to Russia. The paper also highlights how Zelensky described their private meeting at the UN General Assembly as a good conversation, noting Trump's apparent shift from earlier calls for concessions to a belief that Ukraine can reclaim all its land. Trump also praised Zelensky as a brave man and labeled Russia as a paper tiger with a weak economy. He also suggested Ukraine might win back its original borders, though stopped short of promising direct U.S. military aid. During the interview, Zelensky expressed cautious optimism, welcoming America's support, but warning that Vladimir Putin remains unwilling to admit defeat. Russian newspapers, on the other hand, reacted with a mix of caution and critique, with some calling Trump's words a sharp reversal of the American position, while others framed it as U.S. pressure on Putin. Some Russian press downplayed the shift, warning the rhetoric was symbolic and offered little real change. Kommersant, which is described by many as a centrist paper in Russia, frames Trump's recent remarks as a major rhetorical pivot in U.S. policy. The paper also emphasizes that this shift is as much for optics as substance, quoting experts who cautioned the statements were likely aimed at domestic and European audiences, not a total shift in strategy. Still, the paper says that the effect is indeed diplomatic. Moscow's narrative of dominance is indeed challenged, forcing Russia to reframe its messaging. For Russia's press and policymakers, Trump's rhetorical turn deepens uncertainty as they all ask if this new direction is genuine or is a calculated bluff. Arab and international media continue to cover the reactions of the new wave of recognitions of a Palestinian state, including big influential countries like UK, France, and Canada, prior and during the UN General Assembly. Abdurrahman al-Rashid wrote in Al-Sharq al-Awsat challenging the narrative that Hamas's October 2003 attack triggered global recognition of Palestine. He argues Hamas, acting in line with Iran's agenda, sought to derail Saudi-US negotiations that tied Saudi recognition of Israel to the creation of a Palestinian state. Historically, Hamas has sabotaged peace efforts from the 2003 roadmap to Trump's 2020 plan. Al-Rashid frames today's landscape as a battle between Netanyahu's push to annex the West Bank and the Saudi-French-backed two-state solution, now endorsed by 151 countries, including key U.S. allies. While historic, these recognitions risk backlash from extremists on both sides. Ultimately, the piece suggests U.S. backing could cement this path and even earn Trump a Nobel Prize. Israeli newspapers all covered the news and reactions, with some describing it as a stinging defeat. Others regarded it as a new diplomatic law for Israel. Yediot Aharonot captures the scale of Israel's growing isolation in its reporting following a French-Saudi-led UN conference where 9 additional countries recognized Palestinian statehood. Once perceived as a victim of Hamas, Israel now faces mounting criticism, with more than 151 nations backing recognition, including major democracies like France, UK, Canada, and also Australia. The piece highlights the humiliation of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who has delayed his response pending a meeting with President Trump, underscoring Israel's reliance on unpredictable US support. While some states, such as Finland and Japan, held back recognition, momentum for Palestine continues. The piece argues that with the absence of a clear Israeli diplomatic vision, symbolic defeats risk turning into long-term strategic setbacks. Another story that was widely reported in American media was Jimmy Kimmel's emotional return to ABC after a suspension over comments about Charlie Kirk's death. The report in the Wall Street Journal described how Jimmy Kimmel expressed regret, praised Kirk's widow's grace, and also defended free speech, while criticizing President Trump and FCC Chair Brendan Carr for threats against broadcasters. The report also highlights President Trump's reaction as he blasted ABC on Truth Social, accusing the network of political bias and hinting at legal action. The piece highlights how Kimmel's comeback became a flashpoint in ongoing fight over censorship, comedy, and political power. And we'll end with this exclusive, which was published by The Times, revisiting the Coldplay couple's saga. The report offers new details about Kristen Cabot, the HR executive caught on camera hugging CEO Andrew Byron during a concert. Initially portrayed as a scandal, a source clarified that Cabot and her husband Andrew were already separated, and in fact both attended the concert, Andrew with a date who is now his partner. The viral moment, amplified by Chris Martin's on-stage joke, quickly spiraled into global attention, leading both Cabot and Byron to resign from Astronomer. While Cabot acknowledged the hug was inappropriate given her role, she denied any affair. The fallout was severe. She faced online abuse, lost her job, and also struggled to protect her children from the media frenzy. That's it for today. Thanks for watching.